we ready to go?
Yes, we're now live on YouTube.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting. I've just got to press something on the screen here. I've got a continue button there to do. Welcome to the Licensing Committee this morning, held on Zoom. I would like to formally move to the agenda, which you all have, and that is on page 2. And I would like to formally move to item number 1, which is to receive declarations of interest under procedural rule number 8. Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Yes, Madam Chairman. I'm board member for the Broad Internal Drainage Board, which has drains and mills close by the properties.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Mr.
No
Smart?
declarations of interest.
No, thank you, Caroline. Mr. Smart.
So similar to Mr. Kelly, I sit on the Broad Internal Drainage Board, but I'm also a site manager for the RSPB at the Burley Marshes and Braden Water Reserve on Helvergate Marshes.
Right, thank you. Do we have any more, please? I'm having a good look. No, I don't have any either, thank you. So I'll move on then to item 2, and that is apologies for absence. Thank you, Dawn. Could you unmute yourself, please?
Sorry, rookie error. Apologies from Mr. Spanton, who's unable to attend, and from David Pulgotto, who is unable to attend, but I believe Gemma Fairclough is here from that department. But all 3 members are present, Chairman. Thank you.
Now, are you all happy that I call you by your first names, please? It would make life slightly easier for me chairing this. Is that an agreement from everybody? I'm having a look around.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I've got rather a long statement to read out now, I'm afraid, so I hope you're all going to listen. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Broadland District Council's first virtual licensing committee on the 22nd of July 2020. Hopefully everything will run smoothly, but please bear with us if we encounter any problems or technical issues, as this is the first licensing hearing we have held remotely. It is sometimes difficult to cope with so many different internet connections, and delays can happen. The first part of the meeting is open to the public and is being streamed via YouTube. It is live. Therefore, please be aware that people can see and hear all participants. The meeting is also being recorded, just in case we have any issues with the live stream connection during the meeting. Then we will put it on later. Please can I ask that everyone in attendance ensures they are muted throughout the meeting, as background noise can be very distracting to the discussion, especially if the phone rings. My name is Councillor Sheila Gurney, and I am the chairman of the Licensing and Regulatory Committee, and today I am joined by Councillors Karimi Gouverneur and Ken Kelly for this hearing. Also in attendance are the following officers: Dawn Matthews, Democratic Services Officer, who will be taking the minutes of this meeting; Leigh Arthurton, Democratic Services Officer, who is recording and live streaming this meeting; Linda Monkford, who is the Governance Manager, who is helping to administer the virtual meeting; Sarah Harris and Claire Norman, Licensing Officers, who will present the report; and I have David Lowens, the solicitor, who is advising this committee. We also have a number of people in attendance wishing to speak to today's application. We have David Tarry and Jeanette Southgate, who are representing the applicant. Ali Pridmore, Environmental Health. We did have David Pulgotto, but unfortunately he's unable to attend today, so we have Gemma Fairclough instead. Good morning, Gemma. Thank you. We also have Angie O'Connor from the Broads Authority, Mike Smart and Philip Pearson from the RSPB, and Mr. Spanton, as already stated, is not in attendance. He's unable to attend this morning. Please note that I will inform you when you can speak, and at this time you can unmute yourself, but we'll have to mute yourself again once you've finished. There is a prescribed procedure for this meeting, and I will be sticking as rigidly as possible to that, and I trust it that everybody has that procedure in writing. All members of the committee have received in advance paper copies of the agenda and any written submissions by the applicant or those that have made representations. Some of the written comments have been very inappropriate and sometimes offensive, and we will not tolerate this behaviour. I do not nor expect this hearing to be of a similar vein and anticipate respectful dialogue. You have all received a copy of the detailed procedure for this committee, but to summarise the order for our meeting today will be as follows. The licensing officer will present her report, then members of the committee may ask questions of the licensing officer, followed by questions from the applicant, then other parties who have made representations. The licensing officer will respond to the questions. The applicant or his representatives will be asked to speak in support of their application. The committee may then ask them questions of the applicant, followed by questions from other parties. The applicant will respond to questions. The representatives of other parties will then be considered in turn. I will invite each one to speak in support of their representations. The committee may ask questions of the other parties, followed by questions from the applicant. The other parties will respond to questions. We will then go into closing statements. They may be made in the following order: the parties who have made the representations, then the applicant. After that, the committee will then consider its decision in private. At this time, everyone will be asked to leave the meeting except the members of the committee, the legal advisor, and the democratic services officers, and the meeting will stop being live streamed. When the committee has made a determination, it will announce the decision in public with a summary of the reasons. This will be at approximately 2 p.m. We will now consider the application, and the committee will announce its decision in public as well. So we are now going to consider the application for the premises license in respect of the Burney Arms Cafe Bar and outside area Reedon. So please can I ask the licensing officer, which is the first part of my procedure. So I will talk to that. So I'm just looking here. So I need to ask the licensing officer under page 6 of your agenda, item number 8.1. The licensing officer or his representatives will present a report on the matter to be determined by the committee. Thank you very much. Did everybody hear that, please? Yeah, okay, thank you. So it's over to Sarah then. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for those of you that aren't aware, just to let you know, I'll be reading through the report that you should have all received, starting at the bottom of page 8, if you want to follow that. So then the committee has requested, in accordance with the delegation of licensing functions contained in the Broadland District Council's Statement of Licensing Policy, to consider an application for a premises licence in respect of the Burney Arms Cafe and outside area Reedon, Norfolk, NR31 SB. Please note this application does not include the public house on the same site. It does just refer to the cafe and the outside area as demarcated on the plan which accompanied the application. In terms of background, an application has been received from Olive Court Properties Limited. The application consists of the following proposals as contained within the operating schedule received from the applicant, and these timings have been amended in part following the police representation, which we'll cover a bit later on in the report. But the activities as originally applied for are as follows: live music both indoors and outdoors, Monday to Thursday 0600 to 0200, Friday and Saturday 0600 to 0300, and Sunday from 0600 through to 12 midday. The applicant has advised that any outside music will finish by midnight and then move inside to the building or marquee, and all finish times are next day. On bank holidays, when a Friday or Monday, we want to extend the hours on the Thursday and Sunday to 0400. On Christmas Eve, we wish to extend to 4 AM, and on New Year's Eve, have a 48-hour licence when opening on New Year's Eve to close, also from opening time on New Year's Eve to closing time on New Year's Day. In terms of recorded music, again, indoors and outdoors, Monday to Thursday 0600 to 0200, Friday and Saturday 0600 to 0300, and Sunday 0600 through to 12 midday. Again, any outside music will finish by midnight and then move to inside the building or marquee, and all finish times on the next day. And again, the same provision there for bank holidays and special events as per the live music section. They've applied for a licence for the sale of alcohol for consumption both on and off the premises. This will be from Monday to Thursday 0600 to 0200, Friday and Saturday 0600 to 0300, and on a Sunday from 0600 through to 12 midnight. And once again, the same extensions of hours for bank holidays and special events as I've gone through previously. It's proposed that the premises will be open as follows: on a Monday through to Thursday 0600 to 0215, Friday and Saturday 0600 to 0315, and on Sunday 0600 through to 0015, quarter past midnight. The application outlines the steps the applicant intends to take to promote the 4 licensing objectives, and a copy of that is attached to Appendix 1 of this report, which is on page 13. And a plan showing the location of the Burney Arms and the surrounding area is attached to Appendix 2, which is on page 38. Moving on to relevant representations. All relevant representations have to relate to one or more of the 4 licensing objectives, and these are the prevention of crime and disorder, the protection of children from harm, the prevention of public nuisance, and public safety. The responses received from the responsible authorities are as follows. These are also contained within your report from pages 40 through to page 50. The police have made a representation, which I'll go into further detail on shortly. Environmental health, community protection, a representation was received, and that's attached to Appendix 4. Health and safety, also a representation received, attached to Appendix 5. The fire officer made no representations. Planning officer, the Broads Authority, again, representations were received and they're attached to Appendix 6. And then in terms of the Norfolk Local Safeguarding Children Board, Public Health Norfolk and the Licensing Authority, no representations have been received. The applicant has agreed the conditions proposed by the police licensing officer, and the police representation has subsequently been withdrawn. I don't know if it's helpful for me to go through the conditions as agreed with the police.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so there has been a little bit of further clarification from the police in respect of these as well, so I'll just go through those. So the conditions the applicant has already agreed with the police are that all outside music, including music within a marquee, will cease at midnight. There will be no use of the outside area after 1 AM with the exception of 10 occasions a year. The licensing authority and police will be notified in writing at least 7 days in advance. And the police have further clarified that in their mind, an occasion could potentially last more than 1 day. It would be an event. So they anticipate there might be perhaps like a 3-day event over a weekend, and that would count as one occasion. CCTV to be in operation and recording the main public area and external areas of the building. CCTV footage to record a minimum of 28 days and be available to police on reasonable request. The police have further clarified they would ideally request that the CCTV covered as much of the outside area as possible. Then further, for all land-based events with an expected attendance of 100 patrons, a written risk assessment and event management plan will be written outlining security plans, toilet facilities, medical provisions, emergency planning. This document will be provided to police and licensing authority a minimum of 28 days prior to the event date. And finally, the premises holder will have a documented water safety policy considering types and timings of events, and ensuring water safety equipment is available at all times. And the police have confirmed that with those conditions added to the premises licence, there would be no objection to the grant of the licence, and the applicant has further agreed to include those conditions on any granted licence. Moving back to the report at 3.4, as a result of the applicant's further agreement to these further conditions, he requested that the details were forwarded to all other parties who had submitted a representation. Officers therefore circulated the agreed conditions to all parties for their consideration. At the time of writing this report, and I think it still applies, the RSPB, the Broads Authority and the Community Protection Officer have submitted further responses which are attached to their initial representations, and they're included in their appendices attached to this report. All parties indicated that they wished for their initial representation to stand. Also, the applicant has also submitted further paperwork which has been circulated, and I expect they will refer to this later in the meeting. In terms of other persons, representations have also been received from other persons, and they are attached to Appendix 7 of the report, which is on page 59. Representations have been received in objection to the application. There is a representation within this appendix from Mr. Allard, who did not wish for his address details to be disclosed. It is a requirement under the Licensing Act 2003 Hearings Regulations 2005 to provide the applicant with details of those making representations. Therefore, committee will need to consider whether to take this representation into account in determining the application. And I can advise that we as officers do have details of Mr. Allard's address, and it would be reasonable to expect that he might be affected by noise from the premises, but obviously committee will need to make a decision as to how much weight to attach to that particular representation.
Right, can I just hold you there?
Yeah.
David, solicitor, is it appropriate for you to comment on that, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I would be happy to comment, and that is that he has given his name. His representation appears relevant. You've heard from officers that they know his address.
You've frozen. Sorry.
And that, in the officer's opinion, he may be opposed, and I think it would be appropriate to consider. Hello, Chairman. I beg your pardon. Am I now coming through?
You are, but you're a bit patchy, I'm afraid.
Right. Yes, I've got an unstable connection here, but very quickly, the person making the representation has given his name, his address is known, your officers think it is a person who may be affected, and I'd recommend you do consider his representation.
Right, lovely. Thank you very much. Sarah, do you want to continue? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Moving on, a further representation has been received from Natural England, which is attached at Appendix 8. However, this was received after the end of the consultation period, and Natural England have since advised that they wish to withdraw their representation, so that's no longer a representation to be considered by committee. All representations have been detailed in full. The revised guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003 recommends the benefit of the doubt about any aspect of the representation should be given to the person making the representation. Committee will wish to carefully consider the representations and take into account only those matters which are relevant to the subject area of the representation, taking into account specifically the 4 licensing objectives as I detailed earlier on. In terms of proposed action, the committee must determine this application with a view to promoting the 4 licensing objectives. In making its decision, the committee must have regard to guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003 and the Council's licensing policy. The committee, when considering the licensing policy, will in particular wish to have regard to those sections of the policy detailed at Appendix 9, and that is contained within on page 72 onwards of your report. And the committee must also have regard to all of the representations made and the evidence placed before it. In terms of issues and risks, resource implications, the council could incur costs in officer and legal representative time if a person is aggrieved by the decision of the committee and pursues an appeal to the Magistrates Court. There are no legal implications other than the issues that I've just mentioned and the issues in the next paragraph. These are equality implications. There are human rights implications associated with this matter. The interests of the applicant have to be balanced against the interests and protection of the wider community. Any actions proposed in respect of the application must be proportionate to the matter under consideration. The decision-making process must be transparent, and the applicant must be given full opportunity to make representations. The committee is therefore required to balance the interests of the applicant against the interests of the community and decide where the balance should lie. In making their determination, the committee is requested to ensure that the principles of the prevention of public nuisance licensing objective are upheld. And similarly, in making their determination, the committee is requested to ensure that the principles of the prevention of crime and disorder licensing objective are upheld. And finally, recommendations. The committee must take such steps as it considers appropriate. The report states necessary, it should read appropriate, so apologies for that, as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. And committee may be minded to grant the application, modify the conditions of the license, altering or omitting or adding to them, or reject the whole or part of the application. There is also a further option available to committee should they wish to consider it, which is to refuse the proposed DPS. That's just to make you aware that is an option should you wish to look at that too. I think that's everything, so that's the matter before you today. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Angie, I think at this moment it's up to the it's for the committee to question our officer at the moment. You'll get a turn in a moment.
It's not to question, it's to say that the submission from the Broads Authority was not just on planning, it was as a navigation authority.
Okay, we note that, thank you. Right, 8.2, members of the committee may ask questions. So, Ken?
No, nothing from me, Chairman.
And Caroline? Thank you.
Can I just confirm that you said music will finish at midnight now for every day of the week?
I believe that was what I was agreed with the police. Any outside music would finish at midnight.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah, if the outside music finishes at midnight, does it then carry on inside?
There wasn't any further restriction on inside the premises, so I believe any inside music could continue in line with the originally applied for hours on the application.
Lovely, thank you very much. Councillors, any more questions? Having a look. No? Okay. So 8.3, the applicant, licence holder or the representatives may then ask questions of the licensing officer. So that would be Jeanette, or I'm looking David's hand. Do you have any questions of the officers, please?
Not a direct question at this point, only to say that we did revise the music to say it would be 10 o'clock outside, not midnight.
Right. So perhaps Sarah can
I don't think that was something that had been advised of previously, but if that's something that's being offered, then obviously committee can consider that.
I'm looking at David Lowens. I can't hear you, David, you're muted.
There we go. Hopefully I'm going to come through. I was unfortunately frozen for a bit there. I don't know whether the applicant's representatives are experienced in licensing, but just to confirm, if they offer to amend their proposals, that is fixed regardless of your decision. In other words, if the application is amended to say 10 p.m. finish, that'll be Monday through to Saturday, then that is fixed regardless of your decision. So the applicant's representatives need to be clear about that. Are they saying they are now amending the application in respect of any outside matter, both live and recorded, to finish at 10 p.m.?
Thank you for that. So we go back to either Jeanette or David to expand on that and confirm the situation, please.
Yes, we're saying that any outside music, live or recorded, will finish at 10 p.m.
Is that right? Correct, Jeanette, please?
Yes.
Oh dear.
That's not good.
No, something's not right there. I heard you say yes. I did hear it amongst all that spacey music. Okay. Mr. Tarry, David Tarry, do you have any more questions of the questions? Because you've obviously made an amendment there, but do you have any questions of our licensing officer, please?
Not at this time.
Jeanette, do you have any?
No.
No, thank you. Right. 8.4, the other parties or their representatives may ask the questions of the licensing officer. So do we have any questions for the licensing officer from any other person? No, I'm having a look round. Thank you. So I'm going to move on to 9 and 9.1, the applicant's case. The applicant license holder or his representatives will be asked to speak in support of their application. So that's Mr. Tarry, and I'm calling you that because I've got two Davids on here, and Jeanette. Thank you. That's your chance now to speak about your application, please.
Thank you. I'll speak briefly first, and then I'll ask Jeanette if she has anything to say, as she'll be running it. As we all know, the Burnies had a very long history, and it's been shut for 5 years now. 5 years ago, we applied for a change of use on it, and that was turned down, and we were told it had to stay as a pub site. It's been proven through a camera report that the pub itself is not viable to be run as a pub. So, with a lot of local pressure and pressure from boaters and everything else, we came up with the idea of opening the cafe as a bistro, as almost a sort of halfway house. So there can be somewhere for them to go, somewhere to eat, and hopefully will be a viable business for Jeanette, run alongside her artwork and pottery, etc. that she does. That's the reason for putting that in there. I've read all the objections. I've read everything else. When it comes to the RSPB objections, I think, to be honest with you, that they're ridiculous. I've been going around RSPB sites since I was 2 years old. If you take their premier site like Minsmere, you drive down tracks to get to it. When you get there, they've got their own cafe, they've got a retail outlet, they attract 90,000 people a year. It's built next to 3 nuclear power stations, and they've had nothing but success in bringing the birds on. So I don't see that as an issue. As far as the moorings and etc., we've told to the police, which we would have done anyway, that we'll put in safety equipment, etc., and we'll actually exceed what they've suggested because we think that that's not enough. There's been moorings there for many years. To my knowledge, there's never been a fatality at those moorings. I've been on boats all my life. I run a marina. I know what's a safe mooring and what's not a safe mooring. And again, the Broads Authority are happy to use all our moorings there to put boats on when it's too dangerous to cross Breydon, with no safety equipment at the moment being supplied by us. And that's perfectly safe. I don't see why there's a problem all of a sudden when we want to use our own moorings. Other than that, really, I mean, it seems to be thought that there's going to be some kind of, madness going on down there. We're talking about a bistro for people in nice boats. We're not talking about the transient types, etc., which cause trouble on the Broads, because, I mean, to be blatantly honest, on a business point of view, they don't spend any money. And that is basically what I'd like to say. I think Jeanette would like to say something about the actual proposed business itself. So if it's okay with you, Madam Chair, I'll pass over to Jeanette.
Yes, David Tarry, thank you very much. Jeanette Southgate, thank you. You need to mute yourself, Jeanette, please. Thank you.
Hello.
sorry, Madam Chair, obviously Jeanette's having problems with her laptop. What I shall do is, because we're close to each other, I'll pass her this one if that's okay with you.
Yes, I thought you were in the same room.
There you go, you're unmuted.
Oh. Oh.
There you go.
Oh. Right. Hello.
Take your time.
I just like to say that it's going to be a bistro. It's not going to be a pub, not a pub, a nightclub, or for. It's gonna be for people to escape the hustle and bustle and the noise of towns. Burnley Arms. It's a unique location, and that will be taken into consideration with ambient music, reflecting the surroundings. It's not going to be late night rave music. It's going to be a relaxing atmosphere for people that have a drink, have a meal, and relax. Basically, the events are going to be the same with Morris dances, folk music. It's not going to be rave music. I'm kind of not into the rave music myself. I was hoping that there'd be a PowerPoint presentation going non-stop in the bistro with information on local history, the Burnley Arms Mill, the station, and the Burnley Arms, the past communities there, history on the boards, information on local wildlife, birds. And it's also obviously to promote my art and possibly run workshops for artists, like Dave said, pottery and handmade personal gifts, where customers can wait whilst I engrave wood burning things. It's not to become a nightclub or a rave location. It's just peaceful atmosphere, for the boaters, walkers, and people that like wildlife. That's all I got to say, really. It's
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Do you have any witnesses to call, Mr. Tarry?
No.
No. Okay. So 9.5. Other parties. No, sorry, 9.3. We're going back to 9.3. I've skipped ahead. I apologise for that. 9.3. This is for councillors. The committee may then ask questions of the applicant, holder, or their witnesses. So that's for Ken and Caroline. Do you have any questions, please? Yes, Caroline. Both of you. I'll take Caroline first then. Thank you.
Going back to the 10 o'clock music, does that include music in a marquee? Is that going to be finished by 10 o'clock?
No, we said for outside music at that time. Music in marquees it would be moved inside, or the event would be inside if it was going on past 10 o'clock.
So you won't have music in the marquee outside past 10 o'clock?
At this point in time, we intended to have music in the marquee after 10 o'clock, just not outside, not actually outside.
Right, okay, thank you.
So coming back to David, if what time will the music finish in the marquee?
What we said was that marquee would be midnight and inside would be midnight as well.
And before I bring Ken in, I've just seen David raise his hand, our legal officer. Thank you.
Chair, just to work out the applicant's intentions, am I right that the proposal is to have no outside music after 2200 hours, except on a Sunday where you're closing at noon? But in respect of marquees, you're minded to go to midnight. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Have you finished, David?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I was just
Yes,
trying to
thank you.
clarify that.
Yes. Right, Ken.
Yes, for Mr. Tarry, in your original application, everything seems to start at 6 o'clock in the morning, music and drinks. Can you elucidate why you should be opening up at that stage? And basically, you know, is a protection issue and safety issue. Opening at 6 o'clock seems to me to be quite ridiculous. Could you elucidate on that, please?
Yes, no problem at all. The reason that the bistro will be open at 6 o'clock in the morning is purely for the breakfast and coffee trades. Both boaters and walkers are out early in the morning.
Yeah, but you are saying that you would be having alcoholic drinks at 6 o'clock in the morning and music.
No, there would be no alcoholic drinks served at 6 o'clock in the morning or live music at 6 o'clock in the morning. There might be, you know, background music, you know, as in any cafe. But can I just point out, I didn't put in the original application due to things that have happened. I've now taken over project managing this site and overall control of this site because things weren't going well. So, yeah, things are moving on, and I've come into this at the 11th hour. So I apologise if things are a little bit. The
unfortunate thing, David, it becomes a bit phasey with this because we're having to pick bits out here and actually try and find out what the application is actually trying to do. You know, I can't work out here exactly what time you're going to start serving drinks, you know, early in the morning or whenever. I'd like to elucidate with that and give that to our legal officer, and exactly what sort of music you intend to start. You can't be doing that at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I need from you, you know, when you expect to be actually carrying out what you originally said in the original application.
I fully understand that, and I apologise for the confusion. I would be happy that we didn't serve alcohol before 11 a.m. and I would be happy that no, you know, sort of other than background music started before the same time.
I saw David again, our solicitor, indicate. Thank you.
Chairman, councillors, we need to be precise as to what the application before you now looks like. The applicant has said he would be happy for an 11 a.m. start in respect of alcohol and an 11 a.m. start for music. But he hasn't said he is amending the application accordingly. And that's the important bit. So if the applicant could indicate whether he's amending his application, please, and if so, how, that would be appreciated.
Thank you, and thank you for bearing with me. I am very new to all of this. Yes, I'm amending the application to say music and live and alcohol, live music and alcohol will not happen before 11 a.m.
But in-house music will be available at 6 a.m.
In-house music, I'm talking about piped background music.
Yeah. Is that 6 a.m.
6 a.m. Yes.
David Lowens, I saw you raise your hand again.
Yep, sorry, Chair. It's another, Chairman, it's another technical point. I'm sure your licensing officer will confirm, but you don't need a premises license for mild background music.
No. Sarah?
Yes, that's correct. Where it, the music is of background level, so you can still hold a normal conversation over the top of it, then it isn't licensable.
Yeah, I'm seeing Mr. Pridmore. Is that right? You're agreeing with that, are you?
Yeah, that is correct. That wouldn't need licensing.
No. Okay, then. That's fine. So that is amended now to 11. Is that Monday to Sunday? 11 on a Saturday and a Sunday as well?
That is correct.
Yeah, okay then. Right, this is a question from me for Jeanette. You've talked about some of the things that you do and you want to promote. Could you tell me what your previous experiences of running this sort of type of business is, hospitality and bistro and catering and licensing? Can you tell me anything about your previous experiences of where you've run establishments like this, please?
Well, I've worked for Dave. I've also worked in guest houses on Yarmouth seafront, and I've also worked in a bar down Yarmouth seafront.
Is that recent? Is that a recent thing?
Yes.
And I take it from the report that you've been on a designated supervisors training course. Is that right?
Yes.
When did you do that?
Was it 3 months? It was about 3 weeks. It was about 3 weeks ago.
Very recently, then.
Yes.
And that's you passed that one and everything, and that's okay then.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Caroline, do you have any questions again?
Sorry to go back to this, but I'm a bit concerned about the music in the marquee going on till midnight. From my experience of marquee music, you can hear it in the outside. I think Ali wants to say something about that.
Yes, Mr. Pridmore, Ali.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say, from my experience of music, loud music in marquees, it's almost like not having anything there at all. The attenuation from a marquee, generally speaking, you can get marquees that are designed to keep the noise in more than a standard marquee, but they don't tend to be very good at keeping the sound in, and that's the point I would like to make. So restricting the the times for the music till 10 outside is good. I would expect that to be applied to the marquee, because it will not keep the sound in. So that's my point on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Tarry, thank you.
I'd be happy to amend the application so that there was no outside music in the marquee after 10 p.m. as well.
Right. Mr. Tarry, is the marquee going to be a permanent structure?
No. No.
So when would you use a marquee then?
If we had, what we're looking at for this site, as Jeanette has said, is mainly boating orientated and walking orientated. There are things like the Burney Regatta, which happens with sailing boats and everything else, where there wouldn't physically be enough room in the bistro for the amount of people. It'd be events like that we'd think we'd have a marquee there.
And what size would that marquee be?
It would be dependent on the event. We would just hire to the event. But as we've already said, anything above 100 people, we would seek separate permissions. So it would be to a maximum of 100 people.
I have another question, please. I have a funding. I'd like to know how big it is in terms of what was it before? It looks to me like it was like a little bungalow. Is that what it was? Living accommodation that's been knocked through? Or?
No, it was purpose built as a cafe and shop.
Right. And what about how many covers would that hold?
We're looking internally at a maximum of 16 covers plus the outside areas.
And what about toilet facilities?
Toilet facilities at the moment will be in the existing pub building, which are being separated from the building. The staff toilet facilities are separate. And eventually, hopefully, if this building progresses, we'd like to put in planning consent, etc., to put in separate toilet blocks. But that will be further down the line.
And if you put a marquee up, how are you going to deal with?
That would be dealt with by a company providing portable toilets.
Portable loos and things.
Yeah.
Okay. And is there sort of all the appropriate sewers and pipework?
The sewage there is by septic tank, which is emptied, which was obviously when it was put in, it was to serve the pub, the cafe, the chalets, the pump outs for the boats, and 2 static caravans on site, as well as the campsite that was on site. So it's more than adequate.
Right. There was mention in the report about water supply to the site in terms of, was it difficult or was it appropriate? Do you have any concerns about?
Funny enough, yes, I do have concerns which are being addressed. Water is provided by a borehole. There's a very extensive pumping and filtration system within the building. The as far as I can work out, the levels of what's acceptable and what isn't has changed. We are at the moment on a slightly higher magnesium, and we will be fitting a filter to deal with that. And obviously the water will be tested, etc., which I believe they do periodically to check that it's up to scratch.
Gemma, did you have any comments about that at all, please?
Private water supplies is not necessarily my area of expertise, Chair. I'm sorry. I know there are regulations which apply to private water supplies which would need to be fulfilled prior to that being used.
Lovely, thank you very much for that. Ken Kelly, thank you.
Yes, I know you come in at such a late date, Mr. Tarry. This council has an obligation under Section 11 of the Child's Act 2004. What safety measures have you looked at, and what risk assessment of having children actually in these venues? Because, as you say, you're aiming at sort of family groups and the rest of it. So there's going to be lots of children in the area. How are you going to accommodate and safely look after these individuals?
Right. Firstly, Jeanette has a full DPS, so that's that side of it covered. Secondly, as I say, I run marinas and I run boats, and we're very strict on rules for children with life jackets, etc. We will obviously have warning notices, everything else the same, in line with any other Broadland pub about water safety. We've discussed that we're going to put in actually more safety provisions than the police have asked for requirements. And obviously the people that we will be having there will be coming off boats, and I would like to think that they will be responsible and their children will know. I have a policy in the sites that I run where the children go nowhere near the water without being supervised and wearing a life jacket. And I would assume that Jeanette will do something very similar. I mean, obviously full risk assessments will be done on the whole sites, as need to be done, not just regarding children. But at this stage, we're going one stage at a time.
Thank you. Ali, I saw Ali. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just regarding the water quality, private water for the private water supply, I believe there was testing. Again, it's not in my team, but I do obviously sit close to or with the team that deals with private water supplies and the testing. I believe there has been the supply has been tested in the past. I think the last test, I don't think there was a problem with the bill or the invoice not being paid. So I think that private water supply hasn't been tested by us for a little while, but I haven't got the details in front of me, unfortunately. But yes, there has been a history of that water supply being tested by the local authority.
Mr. Tarry, when was the water supply last tested to the site?
I'm not 100% sure. I think it was within the last 2 years, but obviously, I mean, I'm not going to open anything without a safe water supply and without the right certification. Everything's got to be done right.
Thank you. Caroline, thank you.
Mr. Tarry, considering the very limited overland access to the site, how confident are you that you're going to get all the supplies you need, plus maybe portable toilets, were you talking about having a marquee outside, to the site safely?
We've always been given access overland for the cafe, the people that are there, etc. We go in regularly with, at the moment when we're doing work on the site, trying to clear the site with trucks and trailers and everything else, and have no problem. We've always been told as long as it's us and not customers that we're absolutely fine to do so. We are looking into access rights at the moment, and we've got somebody else working on that. And we also believe that, number one, we probably have got access and we've just got to prove that. And number two, if we haven't got access on the concrete road, then there is an ancient access across Havergate Marshes, which we're also looking into at the moment.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. This is a question from me to Jeanette. Mr. Tarry alluded to the fact that you would be the DPS. Can you tell me what checking system you're going to use for under 18s, please?
I would just use ID them for ask for ID. If they look under the age, I would just ask them for their ID.
Are you going to use any of the recognised card schemes that exist for checking ID? There are a number. I think one in particular system.
Yeah. I can't remember what that is, but there is an.
I think it's called the Portland system, actually.
Yes, that
Yes.
one. You got. Yes, I will be. Yes, sorry, but I'm not very good at meetings like this. But yes, I will be using ID. I've also worked in a shop selling alcohol where I've had to use ID and ask for ID for selling alcohol in an off license. So I do know about checking for ID.
This is a question from me for Mr. Tarry again. On page 29 of our papers, at the top, there's a response to a question. The designated premises supervisor has been trained in licensing law and is fully aware of how to operate a licensed premises under licensing law and to prevent crime and disorder and to ensure the site is safe for the public. The local council are bound to visit and give recommendations to ensure health and safety. Now, I think in Mr. Pulgotto's response, he said that that wouldn't be the case. Am I correct? That Mr. Pulgotto is concerned about the reliance on the council.
Madam Chair, may I
Gemma, thank you.
interject? Thank you. Yes. So from a health and safety perspective, it is the onus of the applicant and the operator of that business to ensure that he complies with relevant health and safety legislation. I think Mr. Pulgotto's concerns centred around specifically event safety. We are not duty bound to do routine visits, but we would obviously visit where we felt there were concerns relating to health and safety.
Yes, I found Mr. Pulgotto's response actually at the bottom of page 46, if anyone wants to have a look at that. It says the application states that the local council are bound to visit to give recommendations to ensure health and safety. This is not the case. Duty holders have a responsibility to plan and safely manage their activities proactively and independent of any input from the regulator. So I just wondered if either Mr. Tarry or Jeanette wanted to respond to that.
We have actually said in the response to the police that any event will have a separate risk assessment and management plan put in place, and obviously that is to cover the safety.
Right, thank you. Are there any more questions? Yes, David, thank you.
Chairman, councillors, that isn't what has been said by that proposed and agreed condition. It's for land-based events with an expected attendance of 100 patrons. In other words, it doesn't competently deal with less than 100, and it will need rewriting anyway to cover 100 or more, but it isn't that, as proposed, just mentioned by the applicant. There's a gap there.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Mr. Tarry, do you want to respond to that at all, please?
Yeah, I mean, I have said that we will put in risk assessments and management plans for the whole site, which obviously covers any event under 100 people, and we will put in an extra risk assessment for events which are over 100 people. So in my mind, I don't see where the gap is.
Yes, thank you, David.
Chairman, I'm not sure where that comes from. Obviously it is now and it's today, but is it in previous correspondence?
Sarah Harris.
I don't believe we have any record of that being offered by the applicant previously, no.
No. Did you want to add anything to that at all, please?
I will, if that's okay. That if I got to say, I'll amend it to have a full risk assessment in place, which we would have done anyway, and a separate risk assessment for events where over 100 were expected. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. Right, I'm just going to move on. I have had some questions from various parties, but I will move on formally now to 9.4, where the other parties may question the applicant or licence holder. So this is for everybody really who hasn't spoken as yet or ask any questions. Do you have any, please? Can you raise your hands? Right. I have got Mr. Pearson, and then I will take Mr. Pridmore. I'm just writing this down, and then I will take Angie O'Connor. So, Mr. Pearson, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question around the need for the new year and over Christmas. I understand on the licence there are it's a request for opening till Thursday to 4 p.m. on Christmas Eve. We wish to extend to 4 a.m. on New Year's Eve. Have a 48-hour licence from opening time on New Year's Eve to closing time. That would be a concern for us from a sensitive perspective with birds, particularly at time, cold weather and potential impacts, and would need to be carefully considered. Just wondering the reason for that requirement and how essential that is.
Thank you. Mr. Tarry, would you like to respond, please?
Yeah, that's very simply that people, including myself, will spend the Christmas break on boats. We love the Broads in the winter, and personally I find them a lot better than the summer, a lot more room. And we always go to places over Christmas. The Recutters at Cantley is a classic example where we will jump on 8 or 9 boats and we'll all go and spend a weekend and celebrate Christmas and New Year. And that's the sole reason for that extension. As you pointed out, it's cold. You will find that people are either on the boats or in the bistro.
Okay. Yeah, it's just because of the it's particularly sensitive with the wildlife interest, the bird interest. We've also got staff who will still be on site as well, so that will be a particularly concerning period of time. Again, I think it's coming back down to the detail that's being presented at the moment, and really understanding exactly what's being proposed here.
Mr. Tarry, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I understand your concerns. If you were worried there was going to be a 48-hour rave or something like that, believe me, that's not what we're about. As I pointed out earlier on, I've been bird watching since I was 2 years old. I've been all over the world doing it, so I do have a understanding, and I am very sympathetic.
Mr. Pridmore, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to know, Mr. Tarry, if you could let me know what noise control measures you'll be employing. So when you've got your music outside and inside, how will you control the level of music so it doesn't become an issue for people living in the area in terms of whether you're going to use your own house PA system, noise limiting devices, whether you'll do actual monitoring, so staff will be sort of having a listen at the nearest noise sensitive properties and getting an idea of how loud it is. Limiting the type of music you're playing. I think you said probably more on the lines of folk music, rather than electronic type music. What sort of controls are you envisaging for controlling the level of noise from the music, from events? And also human noise. I mean, that's another aspect of it, which I know is harder to control, but I think it's more the music I'm really looking at.
Yeah, I mean, under normal circumstances, I mean, I have experience of this. My campsite was 85 decibels in the middle of it from a local pub on Saturday night, so I understand the problem. In this case, because we're not putting heavy bass music on, we're not putting loud recorded music on, I would expect that Jeanette or her staff would have a decibel meter, even an app on a phone, and would keep it to a reasonable level. The whole point of this is that people can speak above, and it's more in the background than in your face. So I haven't put any actual measures in because I haven't felt that there'll be a need of it for what we're trying to achieve.
Thank you. Angie O'Connor, you had a question, please.
Yeah, you've given mitigation measures by saying that you'll have 10 events a year with a larger amount of people. I take it that the 10 o'clock curfew for music would be for that as well. And would there be a spreading of the events, or would it be all, for example, could be in July and August, and therefore that would be a particular worry for people that are mooring at our 2 sites along there? If you could clarify that for me, please.
That's a very good point, which actually I hadn't over considered. Yeah, the events would obviously be spread throughout the season because we have a very limited season to do it. So I wouldn't envisage that they would be day after day after day after day, but maybe fortnightly, 3 weekly, etc. Just depending on who wants to do what when. We've got the Wooden Boat Club that are talking about meeting down there instead of Beccles for 1 year. Freeman Owners Club or another one. So it'd be when they wanted to come.
David, thank you.
Thanks very much. Expectation isn't a condition. So the applicant does have the opportunity to say events will be no more than once a fortnight. I just flag that as an opportunity for this applicant. At the moment, though, there is no control on how often.
Apart from the 10 in total. I'm sorry, David, I can't hear you.
Indeed, apart from 10 occasions, we don't know how long an occasion is.
No, okay, thank you. Gemma Fairclough, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I obviously responding in terms on behalf of David. So I've come to this quite late. Apologies, I'm not fully aware of all of the applicant details. One of my questions was similarly to David, the scope and scale and frequency of events. So what would be normally happening and how they would control that from a risk point of view. And also there's no detail about how the applicant would deal with emergency situations, either during normal operation or during any specific event. So I was just hoping to get an idea of the type of events and the number of people that might attend.
Thank you. That's Mr. Tarry, maybe answer that one, or Jeanette Southgate.
Well, when it comes to the type of events, I mean, I have mentioned, but what we're aiming for is regattas, boat club meetings, that sort of thing. If rambling clubs, walkers, yeah, it's all the things which happen there anyway and have happened in the past. We would just want to embrace that and bring it forwards. So as far as that goes, as numbers, we don't really envisage many being more than 100 people. But if you think 4 or 5 people per boat, the numbers can soon crop up. So we'd rather put in the event and say it's going to be event and you know, then risk having over 100 and having to shut everything down, or obviously getting into trouble. So it's not a case of so when you say what type of events, then that's exactly what we're aiming for. There would be smaller things, as Jeanette's indicated, like she might want to run a painting workshop or something along those lines. She does her stuff, and it's got to be an add-on business because it's the only way it'll be viable. So I don't really, I mean, when you say type of events, I know what everybody keeps hinting at, which is music with loud bass, what I would call people that I wouldn't want in any establishment. I have, you know, drugs and whatever else. Believe me, we are trying to stay right away from that. As Jeanette said, we're looking for things which embrace the area. We want people to come to that area because they love the area, not because of an event that's on.
All Right, I'm beginning to see lots of hands going up here. Just come back to David. Have you got anything, David Lambs, have you got anything you want to add at this point, please?
No, Chairman, save that until and unless the applicant offers a condition, then live music means any type of live music, recorded music the same.
Yeah, yeah, I'll take that on board. Two more speakers, Ali Pridmore and then Philip Pearson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Terry, I was just wondering, about the frequency of events, whether, because the events maybe aren't so frequent, whether, temporary event notices might have been an option for having the sort of regatta type events that you were envisaging there, and boat meetings and things like that, rather than the initial application when it did come in. It did ring alarm bells, I have to say, which is why I objected. For the location, for the type of activities that you indicated you wanted to do, the operating hours seemed very disproportionate and excessive. And when I looked at it, when I looked at what you wanted to do, I thought you could have achieved that by having 10, using tens basically for the events that you wanted to do, obviously with sufficient controls in place as well. So I was just trying to get my head around the sort of thinking behind that, or whether that's something that was ever considered, or I was trying to understand the thinking behind it really. I'm not sure you could help with that, but that would be useful if you could let us know. Okay, thank you.
Right,
Thank you.
but firstly, the long hours were probably down to the fact that the way that the boating community work, and even if we sit in the marina and have a drink, somebody will suddenly look at their watch and go, oh, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and we think we've sat there for an hour, and it's purely like that, and it's just sitting drinking wine. It's not throwing alcohol pops down your neck or whatever else. It's a sociable occasion. The reason for the TENS license was basically I'm trying to minimize the work. I'm trying to get everything fixed in place so that everything is set in stone. We know exactly where we're going. Jeanette knows exactly what parameters she can work within. We know where we can book. And from my point of view, yes, I will continue to oversee this project. I'll continue to oversee the site, but I don't want it to be a full-time job. I have that. I have a lot of other things that I do. And so purely it was put in just to fix that in stone. Nothing's going to change. From your point of view, you'll see that that's what we're going to do. We're not asking for anything else. And that was the thinking behind it, if that helps you.
Thank you. Mr. Terry, you keep mentioning about a business plan, and I just wonder why you didn't submit it in the application, even if the sensitive nature of commercial business was redacted. I just wondered why we hadn't seen that document in the submission to examine.
Firstly, as I said, and I know it's not an excuse, I came into this at well, I won't say the 11th hour, but the 10th hour, and I possibly would have done. And when the application was put in, it wasn't done. It can be forwarded to you. There is a very simple business plan, which is a draft copy in place with cash flow projections and everything else. Which, in all fairness, I wouldn't be willing to submit unless I had to.
No, I did say commercially sensitive information.
Yeah, no, sorry,
redacted.
Sorry. Yeah,
I did say that.
If it was a condition of the license that we do that, I could get that to you. It would have to be finalised. But like I say, I didn't put in the initial application. I apologise for that. Maybe should have been done.
My question was why hasn't it formed part of the application, even if the commercial sensitivity of it, which I appreciate is generally finances, is redacted and removed or changed into a wording that is appropriate for you to protect your commercial viability and your sensitivity. So I'm just going to ask David about that, please. Have you got a view on that, please?
You mean myself, Chairman?
No, a legal view on that.
It isn't an obligation under the Act. What is an obligation is that the committee is given enough data to know what's proposed and how the licensing objectives will be promoted.
Thank you. I just wanted to come back to ask Jeanette about staffing. I think I've read somewhere in the reports that there's going to be a very minimal amount of staffing on site. and including yourself. And my interpretation seems to be that you're going to be working very, very hard. But like anybody else, I would imagine you're going to want to have a holiday, and, you know, maybe at times you might become poorly and not be able to be the DPS. So what is the backup plan in terms of who's covering that responsibility when you're not available to be there?
I have Dave, who will take over. My daughter will be helping out, and I also have a partner who will be helping out, obviously, as well.
So who replaces the DPS in your absence?
Dave.
And is he trained?
Mr. Terry. Yeah, you're trained.
Yeah. Or do we, coming back to Mr. Lowens, do we need 2 DPSs on site or just the one?
Is that me?
No, I was asking our legal advisor.
Okay.
Or
Have
Sarah.
the DPS there 24/7.
Do they have any authority to appoint anybody else?
There's only, under the Licensing Act, it's only a requirement to have one DPS at any one time, and that DPS can designate other persons to sell the alcohol on their behalf in their absence. That can be a verbal nomination, or it could be something in writing, but the person they're nominating doesn't necessarily have to have a personal license themselves.
Right, lovely. That's clarified that for me. Thank you very much. I'm still a little bit confused, Mr. Tarry. Your offers and proposals, amendments to reduce the hours is a bit contrary to that of your Mr. Hollock's statement of truth, dated the 16th of July, which is a document that I'm using at the moment, where he is reasonably insistent that we need a late license. So I just wondered how that comment marries up with some of the amendments that you've made.
Right. I had an email from Mr. Hollocks over the weekend where he suggested the 10 o'clock for the outside. I thought at the time actually he had circulated it, which is why I was a bit confused at the beginning. And the timings that I've given on there have actually come directly from him. I am authorised to make decisions on this and whatever else, so I've made the decision on the marquee, etc. And so I can't answer why he was insistent in the first place and changed, other than he has.
Mr. Tarry, have you seen Mr. Hollock's statement of truth?
I have seen Mr. Hollock's statement of truth, yes. And
do you have it with you?
No, it's actually on this laptop. Oh, right. I don't want to risk shutting you down. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to explore with you his final paragraph in his statement of truth. The license application has been based upon the terms of the application and the conditions requested by the police and then agreed. The decision by the committee is only to agree the application with the conditions agreed, and any amendments will not be accepted to lead to the application being denied. So I just wondered if you had any comments that you could make on that last paragraph, please.
My only comment would be I'm fully authorised to speak on their behalf. I'm now overseeing the whole of that site, and the decisions I make here today stand.
Thank you. Mr. Pridmore, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There was another passage in the statement of truth that I found quite interesting, and again it gave me some concerns which I'd just like to raise at this point. It's basically the second from last paragraph, and I'll just read the sentence out that gives me concern. So it says, in order to be attractive, the premises will need a late license and enable these functions to arrange their own entertainment, which may include live music. So the bit that gives me concern there is that people who maybe want to function at the Burney Arms will arrange their own entertainment. And the concerns that I have is how is that to be controlled and managed? You may have no concerns about what you do, but if people are bringing their own entertainment or making their own entertainment, that does give me some concerns, because there could be a conflict between, what you provide and what they provide, and that gives me a little bit of concern with that statement. So I'm not sure if you can clarify that, but if you could, I'd be very, very grateful if you would. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all. As I've already said, there'll be a management plan in place, and there will be restrictions, there will be limits, there will be rules. I'm very big on rules because everybody knows where they stand. Initially, Jeanette will have the power of veto over anything, and she'll be able to authorise whatever goes in or doesn't go in. I will then oversee that, and I will have the power to overrule if I need to, but I don't honestly think I will ever have to.
David Lowndes, could you have a look at the final paragraph of the statement of truth for us, and just maybe in legal speak tell us what the intent is of that final paragraph, if that is appropriate?
What I'm doing, Chairman, is trying to find that. Not so straightforward. Oh, that's irritating. Apologies, Chairman, it's going to take me a while to find it.
Okay, thank you.
Right, this is the final paragraph that goes below, it will never be used for raves and festivals.
That's right, thank you. Yeah.
It is difficult to understand, Chairman, because the licence application as at 16 July, well, that's now radically different. As to the last sentence, I believe the intention of the author was to say that any changes, any amendments, yes, it really is difficult to understand.
I was...
Sorry, from a legal point of view, I can't make a lot of it. The decision by the committee is not only to agree the application with the conditions agreed. That's completely wrong. Your power is to agree or refuse or something in the middle. As to any amendments will not be accepted to lead to the application being denied, I cannot make any logical sense of that. And sorry, I cannot assist. It is difficult to understand.
Yes, I'm afraid I was somewhat puzzled by the comment and trying to get my head around what it actually meant. That's why I did ask Mr. Tarry if he could enlighten us on what that last paragraph really meant. And quite clearly, we're not seeing that. Right, I've got. I think Mr. Pearson wanted to speak again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's really a question around the wildlife and site protections that are in place, and a recognition that the Burney Arms actually does sit within the Halfgate Marshes SSSI, and as a result, there is a requirement for any events to be sent through to Natural England for consideration under section, I think it's 28E of the Wildlife and Countryside Act. David, the legal advisor, may correct me on that. I just wanted to check with the applicant how that is being considered, because from our perspective, we operate within the SSSI and the SPAs. We are under obligations to undertake management, and as part of the business that we operate, we are there to make sure that the sites are in favourable conservation status and meeting the conservation objectives. That gives us, we are therefore under very strict controls over what happens, and we have to be very careful about what is permitted on our sites. And that becomes the type of events that we could permit, the activities that we undertake. The question is how that is being considered by the applicant, particularly around the noise levels, which could be impacting on those protected sites. It's not just the people, it's the wildlife as well. And whether that Natural England will be consulted on the events that are being proposed as well, to ensure that they would be appropriate to that location. I do appreciate this is a licensing committee hearing as well, but that does speak to the work in our business, what we can achieve as well, and making sure that that isn't compromised by the proposed events.
Mr. Pearson, how do your comments, you feel, sit within the 4 licensing objectives then?
So we obviously have staff that are living and working there trying to meet those objectives. We're just concerned, again, this comes back down to potentially the detail, and obviously there's a lot more detail that's being presented on what is being proposed here. However, it's that recognition that it's an important site, and making sure that there won't be a nuisance issue, and also there's safety issues as well. So there are particular issues around some of the management that we do, and making sure that that is properly reflected in any risk assessments. People coming into that area will need to be protected, particularly at night. There's fox control that's taking place. There's lots of ditches, and the activities, the management we're doing specifically because it's SSSI SPA and to meet the conservation objectives will mean that there are potential safety implications as well for those people, using the Burney Arms area, and how that is particularly being considered through the risk assessment process, and considerations for the events that will be held, the duration of those events, the type of events, and the controls that will be in place to manage anyone accessing the Burney Arms.
Thank you. Mr. Tarry, did you want to raise any comments with Mr. Pearson's comments at all?
Yes, I did actually email Natural England and ask for a set of guidelines and rules. As I said earlier on, I'm very strict on rules, and as yet I've had no reply. Where it comes to, I believe he's talking about the whole Burney site. We're not. We're talking about the bistro site and the areas to the front and the side of it, where there are no ditches, etc. And the rest of the site will be fenced off. So that's a no-go area. So I don't actually see that that is relevant.
I have another question. It was regarding Angie O'Connor's comment on page 48, and David Lowndes, you'll have to pull me up if I'm straying into other areas, but there is some theme throughout some of the comments made about planning and whether the site has the relevant planning. David, is that irrelevant?
It is irrelevant, Chair.
Thank you. Right, we won't take that one any further then. Thank you. So I'm looking at now my screen to ask you if any of you wish to say or ask any more questions to the applicant on their case, please. Sarah, do you have any?
No questions. Thank you very much.
Okay.
No questions from me, Madam Chairman.
Caroline?
I'm still concerned about the access to the site over land. From the RSPB letter of the 3rd of July, it says access from the A47 to the Burney Arms is private and the RSPB would not give permission for its use. And it does cite certain accidents that have happened with cars going into ditches and stuff. Could the applicant explain the other proposal he was talking about land access to the site?
Mr. Tarry, thank you.
Sorry, I was having problems unmuting for some reason. Yeah, I mean, we are having discussions with the RSPB, actually with Mark from the RSPB, regarding access across that. We're also looking at access rights that we have. The car in the accident on that lane that they're talking about was actually a stolen car. which was nothing to do with our site or anybody else's site. The Acle Strait is notorious for accidents. We know that. But what we're looking at is existing access. What we're talking about at the moment, however, is only the road access for us, the same as it is at the moment. What we're talking about for events, etc., is walkers and boats.
Right, okay. David, do you have any questions for Mr. Tarry, please?
Thank you, no Chairman. I've noted the matters offered as conditions rather than the sort of we hope to operate in this way. So yes, I've kept a decent record. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, you haven't said anything yet. Do you wish to say anything? You're sitting there with your cycles, I can see.
No, I was really here as an observer. Obviously, we're more than happy to speak and engage with the people of Burnley Arms, so as we always have been.
Thank you. So this is my last call for anybody who wishes to question the applicant, please, if you have got anything. Mr. Pridmore, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's a point around public safety, really, and it's a point that I thought the police might raise as an issue, or a significant issue, which I don't necessarily think they have. And I have been out on site. It was a very difficult journey. It was some time ago. Obviously, from Halvergate across the track, you have to cross 2 railway lines. You have to get permission. It's a difficult journey over that land. The concerns that I have from a public safety point of view, if there was a public order, I'm not saying there would be, we just don't know, or if there's a medical emergency, a fire, or whatever it might be, is the response times. If there was an event there, if someone had a heart attack, or whatever it might be, is the response times would be maybe potentially quite significant, just based on experience. I mean, it'd be interesting to know whether there was any other options, or what the sort of applicant's view is on that, really. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tarry.
Yeah, it must have been a while since you were there, because they've now put automated crossings in, so you don't have to make the phone calls, etc. anymore. The road has also been improved since they've been doing the waterworks and the pump work down there. It's actually quite good. And the fire brigade have said that they have no issue with getting there, so it's one of the emergency services we've had a positive response from. The other thing that I would point out is normally when there's an emergency on the Broads, obviously I deal with boats most of the times, heart attack on a boat, whatever, as a matter of course, it's normally Hemsby Lifeboat and the Coast Guard which go out. The Burnley Arms is actually a lot closer to both of those situations than most other pubs on the Broads, so the response times by them would actually be a lot quicker.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take Gemma Fairclough next, and then I think Philip Pearson wants to come back in. Well, is that a point of order, David?
It's just to wind up with my understanding of the extent of the application, Chairman, at this stage, but I can follow everyone else.
Thank you. So that's Gemma next, please.
Thank you, Chair. It was just really to follow on from Ali's point, and I know that the applicant has advised that they are prepared, obviously, to do specific management plans for events and carry out general risk assessments as is required under health and safety legislation. I just wanted to make sure that they are considering that as part of their event management plan. Any emergency, I think I raised it as an issue earlier with regard to how any emergency would be dealt with, either in normal operating as a cafe bistro or when there are any specific events, and that consideration needs to be part of any event management safety plan.
So we're then going into the realms of who's the trained first aider, maybe, stuff like that?
Any event safety management plan does cover those points. There's a guide which David Paul Gotto refers to, the event safety guide, which we would want to see any applicant following for specific events. And I think because of the nature of the site there and the difficulty potentially with access and the water, that in general normal operating times they would have carried out a risk assessment to to how they operate, who they have on site, and make sure that they've considered safety generally, but also during events as well.
Thank you. Philip Pearson. Thank you.
Just an observation, Chair, and just sort of following on from my colleague Mark's comments, and we are willing to work with the applicant. And I note that the police have asked for any events paperwork to be submitted. Just as sort of good neighbours, just that communication seems to be really important, and it's been interesting hearing the clarification on some of the proposals this morning. Just a request that we are also consulted, that we're willing to work with the applicant around Burnley, as Mark has said, but that we obviously do need to be consulted. We're willing to do that. Just that if there are events taking place, it would be great to have that kind of advance notice and warning, so we could work with the applicant in a constructive way. So just a point really following on from what Mark was saying. Thank you.
Thank you. David Lowens, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just trying to understand the current status of the application as per page 9. So, live music indoors, and that doesn't mean marquees, is as written. Live music outdoors will cease at 2200. Am I right? Mr.
That's
Tarry,
correct.
is that you?
That's correct.
So your live music indoors, you're still saying 6 a.m.
No, I think we said 1 a.m.
No, start 6 a.m.
No, 11 a.m. we said would start.
Right. So live music indoors and outdoors, 11 a.m. not before.
Not before.
Then live music indoors and outdoors will cease at 10 p.m.
Sorry, I lost you a little bit there. Live music outdoors and in marquees will cease at 2200.
Yep. What about live music indoors?
At the moment, we're still where we were, which was 1 a.m.
Live music indoors cease 1 a.m. Obviously, apart from Sunday, where you've only asked until 12 noon.
Correct.
Are recorded music times the same?
Recorded music other than the background music, which doesn't apply.
Yes, so recorded music is the same because you won't need a license for recording.
Yeah. Yes.
And supply of alcohol for consumption on and off, not before 11 a.m.
Not before 11 a.m., correct?
No change to proposed closing.
No.
No change proposed to irregular hours, if I can call them those, i.e. bank holidays, you're looking at 4 a.m., that sort of thing.
That's correct.
No change to proposed opening hours.
Other than the 11 a.m. to serve the alcohol, 6 a.m. just to open for breakfast, etc.
Right, sorry, opening hours rather than licensable activities.
Sorry, yeah, no change.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So can I just confirm that would be on page 9, on bank holidays when Friday or Monday, we want to extend ours the Thursday and Sunday to 4 a.m. in the morning. Are we saying that still stands?
At this time, yes.
And over Christmas, you want it to 4 a.m. and New Year's Eve as well?
Yes.
Till 4 in the morning?
Yes.
Right, okay, lovely, thank you. Right, I'm going to call this a last call now to ask the applicant any questions from anybody, please. I'm just having a look to see who's indicating, and at the moment, I think Dawn, perhaps you can check with me. I don't think there's anybody. No.
I think that's fairly comprehensive. Everyone's had a full opportunity to ask questions of the applicant, so I think we'll move on.
Right, okay. Right, 10.1. Now we have had some views and representations come forward, but this is now your chance to speak. So I will ask first, I think, let me have a look and see. Angie O'Connor, I'm just having a drink, sorry. Do you want to present your representation, please?
I think things have changed with the timings. I would just like clarification really on the 10 events. Because obviously if it's done during the peak season, that could be every week, which would affect people that are moored there. Majority of families come to the Broads for quiet and tranquility and to enjoy the surroundings. We have 2 moorings in close proximity to the Burney Arms site that add up to about 90 metres. So there are quite a few boats that moor there. And we're just really worried about the disturbance of that. And also the supply of alcohol. And so I just wanted clarification really on the events. It's obviously a safety issue when people have been taught when imbibing of alcohol. And the most accidents that happen on the Broads are because of people that have consumed alcohol and the getting on and off of boats. That's when most tragically, most people have died when that's been the case. So it's just really making sure that all the safety measures are in place and that they don't imbibe too much of alcohol and obviously have dire consequences when they get back or try and get back on their boats.
Thank you. Right, Mr. Pearson, did you want to submit, please?
Thank you, Chair. So I've already touched on a few points already, but briefly, just reiterating our concerns around the measures that will be in place to protect the wildlife around the Braden Water Special Protection Area and the sites of special scientific interest. That's really important to us in terms of the impact that uncontrolled events could have on those sites. We've obviously had a discussion and there's obviously been a bit of movement on what is being proposed, and that clarification has been helpful. So thank you for that. Just also to clarify, we do have staff living and working within 300 metres of the Burney Arms as well. So for us, it is about that nuisance element of what was put forward current in the proposal as it was set without any clarity and the concern that could cause nuisance basically through the year, because the way the application was worded, it seemed to give carte blanche to hold a range of events throughout the year without any suitable controls being in place. It's helpful, obviously, to have had the conversation we've had now and appreciate that there's more, that there will be changes and amendments to the proposal. So that's we will reflect on, but I've mentioned about the safety issues and concerns about how that will be controlled. Again, it's helpful to know that there'll be risk assessments that will be put in place and that will be suitably managed. Again, that wasn't detail that had been set out in the application information that we had looked at. So that sums up, I think, the safety issues I've mentioned about the fox control, that we are undertaking activities that we would obviously be mindful that the applicant takes into consideration in their risk assessments. And we're also keen to make sure that they're suitably indemnified against that risk as well, as all the risk should be carried by the applicant and not the RSPB for any risks associated with the events that will be held. So, as I said again, we are willing to talk to the applicant. There is a meeting that's been arranged between Mark and Mr. Tarry, and we would obviously look to kind of hear what is being proposed and see how we could work constructively with the applicant. But we are still keen to make sure that they are appropriate to the location because of the wildlife interests, and the necessary SSSI and habitats regulations assessments would need to be, well, ideally we'd like to see that form part of the license conditions, if it was appropriate, just to make it really clear on the process that needs to be followed in this sensitive location, and make sure that any events that are being proposed, especially anything during the winter, those cold weather periods, are going to be appropriately managed.
Thank you. Gemma. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said, I am standing in for David Paul Gotto, who provided his observations, and I'm just going to read them out and try not only to cover briefly the points already done. David's observations were that the premises is in a fairly remote area with specific access arrangements and is bordered by a stretch of river, and that this presents some public safety challenges when operating licensable events, and that the site has some limitations in terms of power, water and drainage. The requested timing of the activities extends into the early hours. I understand that that's obviously been amended slightly as part of this committee meeting. And then the occupation of the site on a residential basis also contributes further to these challenges. More detail was required about the scope, scale and frequency of the activities applied for in order for event safety risks to be adequately assessed. No detail had been provided about how the events will be managed either during normal operations or in the event of an emergency, and I understand that the applicant has said that he will carry out event management plans, and I would urge the committee to consider making this perhaps part of the conditions in terms of following the event safety guide, which is also known as the Purple Guide for event safety. It's an industry published guide which provides comprehensive guidance for event organisers to follow. There have been no specific public safety conditions have been proposed as part of the application. The application states that the local council are bound to give any recommendations to ensure health and safety, and I think we covered that point earlier. It is the duty holder's responsibility to plan and safely manage their activities independently of us as regulators. The event safety management plan should really have been produced, which demonstrates how safety precautions and proportionate to the specific risks and hazards presented by the site and the proposed activities should be in place. The application states that a meeting is requested with health and safety team to review those in place. This hasn't been possible due to COVID-19 situation, albeit we are available to provide advice and guidance to proprietors of businesses. Notwithstanding David's comments above, the application is determined he would be pleased to receive any more and further information on the event safety systems and provide comments. David proposes that specific public safety conditions would be required when the grant of premises license is considered that would deal with all the key areas of the event safety guide. And he just clarifies that that hasn't been provided as part of the application. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mark, did you want to say anything?
No, I think Phil has clearly covered all of our concerns. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Ali?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Tarry for agreeing the changes that he's already agreed. I think that's a welcome addition, really. I do have concerns. Obviously, there are proposals to have events running until 4 at certain times of the year, which I think is very late. And I have to say the area itself is a very low noise area, background noise area, and the sound will travel. I mean, that's from experience. The sound will travel some distance. So I would ask that there'd be controls put in place to reduce the impact on people living in the locality. Some people are located quite close, some further away. And I would ask, be it, a noise limiting device, a house PA system, which is strictly controlled and limited. I would also ask the 4 AM for the Christmas and New Year periods, etc., that be reviewed and be, I appreciate, festive season, maybe give a little bit more, but I think 4 AM is excessive and not proportionate. So I think I would like that to be, to be amended, really, because I think the sound from that area will travel in the early hours of the morning, and there is that risk of, public nuisance. But I do welcome the changes that have been proposed today. I think that is a positive. I wish that had come sooner, but it hasn't. We are where we are. But that's in summary my views really on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I don't have anything further to add at this point. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to say anything, because this is now your opportunity? No? Ah, Mr. Pearson, I saw your hand go up, and then David. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Just to reiterate again that we would appreciate in writing at least. We're suggesting maybe giving a 28 days, but a period of time before an event, so we can be prepared for that and know exactly what's going on, given that we will be neighbours to the Burney Arms.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence. David, thank you.
Chairman, just to flag, this is also the opportunity for persons to ask questions of those making representations, and I don't know if the applicant has any questions to anyone.
Yes, I've got that on my list here. I'm just trying to get everybody to speak and say things. So, right, representatives. Any questions for Mr. Tarry, please?
No, no questions from me at this time. Thank you.
No. Has anybody got any questions to ask Mr. Tarry, please? Caroline, thank you.
Can I ask Mr. Tarry if he would be prepared to alter the timings for Christmas Eve and bank holidays for the end of the 4 AM finish?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you to a certain extent. I'd be happy to make that 3 o'clock, 3 AM.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken, have you got any questions, please?
No further questions, Madam Chair.
No? Okay. Has anybody got any questions or anything they want to say at this point? Mr. Pridmore.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Terry, you've agreed 3 AM. I still think that's a little bit too late. Would you be prepared to go till 2?
I think other than New Year's Eve, I'd be happy to go till 2. I would still like New Year's Eve at 3 AM if possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, with your permission, as to the unusual hours, the application says on bank holidays, when Friday or Monday, they're looking to 4 AM. I read that as now 3 AM. Is that right?
Yep, that's what I take it as. Is that
And
right,
the
Mr. Tarry?
That's correct, yes.
And in respect of Christmas Eve, it wasn't to 4 a.m., it was a 48-hour license. Sorry.
No, New Year's Eve had a 48-hour license.
For Christmas Eve, 4 a.m., now 3. New Year's Eve, I beg your pardon, 48 hours. If I say Christmas again, my apologies, New Year's Eve.
I've said I'm happy to amend that until 3 a.m.
And what about Christmas Eve?
It's all 3 a.m. Sheila.
3.
Sorry, Chairman, can I just come back on bank holidays, Friday and Monday? Was that definitely 3 a.m? Because I think the applicant did indicate 2 a.m. On everything other than New Year. So I think that was 2 on the first paragraph. On bank holidays, when Friday or Monday, we want to extend the hours on the Thursday and Sunday to 4. I think the applicant did agree 2.
Yeah.
Right.
And then
David, have you got that, David?
I've got, in respect of live music indoors and out, bank holidays, 2 a.m. Recorded music indoors and out, bank holidays, 2 a.m. I'm not clear regarding the supply of alcohol. Is that as per music? Mr. Tarry?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Right.
Sorry, Chairman, I don't want to labour the point, but to make sure we are clear, just on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, can I just double check the finishing time then for live music and outdoor music? Was that, I believe it was 2 a.m. for everything other than New Year's Eve.
That's correct.
So Christmas Eve you wish to extend to 3 a.m. Sorry, to 2 a.m. But
2 a.m.
New Year's Eve would go to 3 a.m. That's what you're actually offering.
So that
Dawn actually says New Year's Eve has a 48-hour license.
Sorry, yep, you're right. Yes, so New Year's Eve is the exception. Christmas Eve is till 2 a.m. along with bank holidays Friday when they fall on a Friday or Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Please, someone correct me if I've got that wrong.
So we've got no, but I'm just wondering about, do they still want to open at 6 in the morning on New Year's Eve?
We would still want to open at 6 for breakfast, etc., or have the option to, but would not serve alcohol before 11 a.m.
11. Yeah. Okay. Right. We'll move on to item 11 then. I think we've nearly hitting on to 2 hours now. I'm going to take item 11 through, and then after that I am going to have a break for 10 minutes and I will give you some instructions about how we deal with that nearer the time. So I'm looking at closing statements now on page 7, 11.1. So closing statements from any parties who made representations or their representatives. Do I have any closing statements, please? Mr. Pearson, thank you.
So clearly disappointing not to have had any dialogue with the applicant prior to today, and clearly we will have conversations going forward, but there's a little bit of reassurance through the proposals that have been made. Still, I think we have concerns about the type of event that might happen during the winter. That's still in there, the number of boats, whatever. So some safeguards around the numbers and the type of activity around that time would seem appropriate, particularly given the sensitivities of the area, and just to make sure that that it is appropriate what is being proposed. There is obviously this process that needs just to be clear, and that is around obviously the license that's happening hearing now, but also making sure that that is properly integrated into the wider assessments of the triple SIs, the Braden Water SPA and Ramsar, and making sure that those additional assessments are definitely undertaken to determine that any events held in this area will be appropriate, and will give the relevant safeguards. And this also does apply to our staff to make sure that there will not be that nuisance that will occur from anything that takes place. It sounds like that we can have some reassurance from that, from what we've discussed, but again, just really making those points that they be considered, and as much of that be tied up in some really strong conditions to ensure that that's properly managed. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else wish to speak? Yes, Gemma, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's just really in relation to the public safety conditions that I think David has highlighted as part of his submission, that would be requested as part of those any conditions put on the licence in relation to the event safety guide, and that they requirement to provide event management plans in advance of events in sufficient time to allow comments to be made would be helpful, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Angie, did you have anything? No? Ali, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I think what I would ask the applicant to provide is a noise management plan, which will basically indicate how they will control the noise on site and from events, and obviously with particular reference to the bank holidays and the New Year's Eve, which obviously go later on. And I would ask for the music to be controlled at source, so through a limiting device appropriately set. So, you know, controlling it from source, basically. I think that's what I'm after. Thank you.
Sarah, do you have anything to add? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Nothing really further to add other than obviously having heard all the information today, both verbally and the information contained in your report, the committee to determine the licence application following one of the options as listed on page 12 of the report, which is to either grant the application, modify the conditions of the licence, altering or omitting or adding to them, or reject the whole or part of the application. As I said, it is also within your power to refuse the DPS should you think it appropriate to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And some conclusion comments from the applicants, please, Mr. Tarry or Jeanette Southgate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say, I mean, I've said what I've got to say basically, and thank you very much for your time in listening, and thank you for being so understanding.
Thank you. Jeanette, did you want to add anything, please?
Just what Dave said. Yeah, thank you, and we will listen to what you say and we'll take it into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. David, did you want to add anything at all?
Myself, Chairman?
Yep.
The only thing I would flag is that your decision needs to be based on the licensing objectives, the representations you've heard. I would not recommend, as per the RSPB suggestion, that you put in a condition that said other licenses must be obtained.
I've lost you, David. No, we're not.
Outside the Licensing Act.
Can you repeat that, please? We lost you. Well, I did anyway. I can't hear you very well, I'm afraid.
Chairman, am I coming through now fine?
You are now, yes, thank you.
Excellent. It was just to flag that your decision needs to be based on the relevant matters via the Licensing Act and the regulations. and the guidance, obviously, and the representations you've received, both orally today and on your papers. The RSPB suggest a condition tying in the licence, if one is granted, with other legislation. And unfortunately, I would be recommending against that, as it is beyond the Licensing Act. In the same way as I wouldn't be suggesting a condition that says you must obtain planning before this licence can be operated.
Yeah, I got, yes, that's fine, thank you. Right, okay, so I've done 11, 1 and 2. Can I just refer to Dawn and Linda and perhaps Sarah? Have we missed anything out? A, in procedure? Have I missed anything I should have asked in procedure? Or are we all happy that the procedure as prescribed to a point has been adhered to?
Chairman, I think I'm happy to confirm that you've followed the procedure that's been included within the agenda papers quite fully. I think everyone's been given the opportunity not only to present their case, but also to ask questions of every other party in attendance. So I think from that point of view, you've satisfied that, and you now need to just advise the panel as to how we proceed to the deliberations and the reconvening of the meeting for the announcement of the decision.
Now, what happens now is that we will have a break, and I need to remind you that the recording is still going, and I ask you to turn off your microphone and your video. At this point in time, when we reconvene in 10 minutes, there will only be certain people in that reconvened meeting.
Chairman, may I just intervene there? I think what may be more straightforward and probably more convenient for our guests is if we actually end this meeting.
Right, we'll do that.
In terms of the guests that are speaking, obviously will not be part of your private deliberations. They may wish to go and have comfort breaks, lunch, whatever they feel the need to do. And I think we're on track still to reconvene with a new meeting at 2 p.m.
That's right, yes.
So if everyone who wants to join us for the announcement of the decision, they can do so with the details that have already been provided at 2 p.m. In the intervening period, those members that are required as part of the decision-making process will remain in the meeting. But for the other members in attendance here today, you may now wish to leave the meeting and rejoin us again at 2 o'clock. Is that okay, Chairman?
That's absolutely fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll say goodbye to those people who cannot carry on for the minute because we go into private session.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So Leah will just, Leah will just be stopping live streaming, and it will just be the councillors that remain, and then Democratic Services officers, everyone, and David Legal.
Yes. So thank you to Gemma, Angie, Mark, Ali, Sarah and Claire, Jeanette, Philip and David. You now have to leave.